Why, salutations, avid observer. It's me, Trasho. Star Wars, am I right? Now you know me, I'm full of garbage. I come equipped with over 1,000 built-in nostalgia vomit memories for your viewing pleasure. By now you're probably sick of me talking about games for the PCP, so I thought I'd take you back to another console I countered back in my youth. If you ever went to a flea market or a mall in the aughts, there's a really good chance you probably saw one of these. The Power Player Super Joy 3. When I was a kid, anytime we'd go to the mall, there was a kiosk selling this thing, and I remember it always puzzled me. What was this? As a Star Wars nut, I was simply enthralled by the Phantom Menace Duel of the Fates picture plaster on the front, and not only that, this thing came with a whole GAT. They say 5 lucky kids out there opened their Super Joy 3 and found real bullets.
Salve cari amici, carissime amiche, più che altro carissimi giovani, attenzione, è arrivato il Power Player Super Joy. Joystick, vedete questo addirittura con la monoleva, l'altro primario e in più una bellissima pistola.
Well, here we are. Perhaps the most alluring part of this enigmatic Super Joy 3 was the promise of over 76,000 games. If you were the kid in the neighborhood who even owned like 10 games, you were considered a god. But see, my pathetic body count was limited to Fairly Odd Parents' Enter the Cleft and Rugrats Scavenger Hunt. To instantly go from that to over 1,000 games would surely grant me true power. And bitches. Yes, this thing would do me nice. Speaking of doing something nice, I need a little help here. Can you tell me which of these pictures contains a stoplight? What's your mother's maiden name? My mind couldn't fathom it. What games were contained within this strange box? Was that gun for play or for protection? I had to know. But one day, the Super Joy 3 just stopped showing up at the mall because the people who sold them got arrested. But finally, it was around 2007 at a flea market where I finally worked up the gumption to ask for one. And my dad said, sure, why not? Opening up the box, you get 2 controllers, one clearly mimicking the N64 with this vestigial analog stick that doesn't move. It's purely just for show. This right here is the console itself. It's pretty much a plug-and-play controller containing a whole bunch of NES games. The D-pad and buttons feel disgusting, and even that's nothing compared to the second controller they gracefully included, which is meant to be a Genesis ripoff. This D-pad feels like a bottomless pit, while the buttons feel crunchitized and icky. But despite this, what was in this strange box provided me with so many memories and hours of fun where I was transported into this strange relic of an 8-bit world I knew nothing about. My first steps with retro gaming came with a notorious bootleg and a gun. You turn the Super Joy 3 on and what you get is a long list of NES titles. No Phantom Menace. Yeah, there were seemingly thousands of games like the box said, no fooling. So many strange names too, but of course there was one I instantly recognized, which was Super Mario Bros. And quickly this 3-pronged skinwalker became a machine just for this one game. There I was as a kid in 2007 experiencing the same super joy that kids who grew up with NES had. I didn't know about video game history or console generations, I just knew this was old Nintendo stuff and it was still a lot of fun. And mind you, I did have a PlayStation 2, much more advanced tech, and I was still drawn to this thing. Somehow, some way, even with this controller, I was able to get the movement down somewhat. And I can't properly convey to you the crack-like euphoria I got when I discovered those warp pipes all by myself. No internet, no friends for tips and tricks, it was just me and a classic game. And as a 10-year-old, I was just in love with how effective the simplicity of it was and the 8-bit style. Funny enough, I was so enthralled with this game, in fact, that in MS Paint I would make these total rip-off characters of Mario and Peach in what was supposed to resemble this pixel style. You taught me well, Super Joy. It's a testament to this game's timelessness that I was still able to enjoy it in this way all these years later and for it to have such an effect on me. And I know I said this wasn't a tool-assisted speedrun, but I'm sorry, I lied, okay? I was using the gun. Okay, first rule of gun safety, make sure it's off. Rule number 2, don't ever miss. And finally, if you ever find yourself staring down a barrel, make sure it's your own gun. Along with Mario, of course, came Duck Hunt and a lot of other light gun NES games. It's funny to think at the same time people were experiencing the mind-boggling motion controls of the new Nintendo Wii, I was shooting these 8-bit ducks and playing Hogan's Alley. And I mean, the novelty was still the same. I remember thinking it was neat. And it's simple enough that even this bootleg worked well for a bit. I find when aiming, it's best to envision someone you really don't like. Never mind, this shit sucks. In just 20 minutes of recording footage and using this gun, it broke, so there you have it, useless plastic. I guess I'll just walk into a bank with this and see what happens. Now, scrolling through this list and all these other games, I remember it feeling so bizarre. Here you got a lot of obscure titles and a lot of the black box NES games, but I didn't have a clue what any of these were. Oh, Toy Story, okay, I know what that is. I know nothing. The elephant, he just watched. Yeah, my experience with most of these titles was dropping in, not knowing what to do, and dying and never playing it again. But you scroll through this list long enough, and that's when you discover the truth, avid observer. Yeah, there's actually only about 76 games total here, repeated 1,000 times, so sure, this thing has 76,000 games in it the same way I have a VHS collection over 1,000 tapes and they're all the Phantom Menace. Where are you? When the games do repeat, sometimes they have different titles or they just randomly start on different levels. Like one of the Mario ROMs starts you on the second level. Okay, thank you. Ooh, we got Tekken. I've been taken for a fool. For the most part, it's just a long list of lies and mistranslations. But make no mistake, there are good games in here, and a decent lot of them. So we covered Mario and Duck Hunt, but we supposedly still have 75,998 games to go. So let's dive into this list full stop. First game is Contra. The final game is Twin B. Twin B. Yes. Okay, but for real though, both Contra and Twin B rock. Yeah, there's a lot of clunkers in this list, but when a game did stick out and was fun, it was a big deal to me. Contra, I remember wanting so bad to get down, but I never got too far at all, and I had no clue about the Konami code. Which does, of course, work on this controller, it just feels like you're doing a forbidden jutsu. I remember any time I would make just a little bit more progress, it felt like crack, I'm telling you. Today, of course, I know Contra is a revered classic, but again, I didn't know that at the time, so it felt vindicating to find out this game that was once part of my own little world was so beloved. What other games? Kung Fu I remember really liking. You had Excite Bike buried deep in the list. Also, the Super Joy 3 goes hard with the shoot-'em-up games. You have a decent collection here. Padded out with a bunch of the NES arcade ports that are fun in their own right too. You have a decent mix of classics along with a lot of weird, very out there Famicom games, which now I can really appreciate. You'll pick a game at random on this list and okay, attack the Devil's World.
Well, why didn't you say that in the first place, silly?
Oh, you didn't know who the Ice Climbers were before Melee? Well, maybe if you hopped on Super Joy Brothers Brawl every now and then and selected game number 36, aka Antarctic, you wouldn't be such a fake fan. A few years later, when I did discover what the Super Joy 3 really was, I had to wonder, why go with all these games? How come there was no, Zelda? Okay, sure, no save battery, but what about the Mega Mans, or the Batman, or Mario Brothers 3, Metroid, or Ninja Gaiden, Ninja Turtles? Why skimp on so much? I'm sure there's probably a technical reason, or maybe it's just a bootleg, and that's really what they could have scraped together, so it doesn't really matter, but one thing I always wondered was, what was this port on the back? Now, years later, I know you can pop in Famicom games here. And I just happen to have this bubblegum flavored Kirby cartridge, and yeah, it works. I'm playing Kirby on this abomination. How thoughtful of them to create a Famiclone that can actually play Famicom games. The thing is, how many people buying this in the mid-aughts had access or the knowledge to seek those out? I guess you could also feasibly use an adapter if you felt so inclined to make NES cartridges work here too. I'm sure some speedrunners out there swear by the Super Joy 3 junk controller. And you know how much I hate junk. Aren't we having fun? If you're having fun, please comment below the 3-digit number on the back of your credit card. Now, one thing that's also kind of neat is since most Famiclone consoles use the same 9-pin inputs, you can buy a much better third-party NES knockoff controller and plug it into the Super Joy, and oh my god, it's easy to forget how much smoother these games play with an actual competent controller. Finally, they can play like butter the way they were intended to be. But since the Super Joy console itself is always registered as controller 1, that does mean for a lot of the games you're gonna have to select the 2-player mode, put player 1 on a sacrificial Super Joy slab, and there you go. So yeah, for good controls, you have no choice but to play as Luigi, and honestly, I see this as a win-win. You know, for a shoddy bootleg system, I do look back fondly on the Super Joy 3. Yeah, I have nostalgia for something that was supposed to already play off of nostalgia. I feel like as a kid I always had a desire to know more about video game history, and for what it's worth, this was a great introduction, and maybe that's why I was drawn to the Super Joy in the first place. I also learned the Super Joy 3 was quite a notorious Famiclone, and an early instance of just how harsh the penalties for selling these knockoffs could be. One of the largest distributors of the Super Joy was YungJunko, who sold the Super Joy 3 at malls and kiosks all across America. Most likely one of the ones I myself encountered so many years ago, and because of it he got arrested by the FBI, 5 years in prison, and was fined hundreds of thousands of dollars, all so I could be playing Twin B right now. And they plastered his face on these piracy is a crime ads that was featured in magazines and websites where the Super Joy 3 makes a little cameo. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, after his sentence he was deported to Israel, where mid-flight his plane was hijacked by Nintendo and they fucking killed him.
You should have been pirated, Twin B.
So, justice prevailed and happy endings still do exist after all. Piracy is a crime, a punishable one, and you will die. Avid observer, if you notice any instances of piracy or copyright infringement at play, notify me immediately. Lie to me, and I'll wear your skin. Okay, bye. Have a beautiful time.
Old Trasho out in the farm. Old Trasho never meant harm. Old Trasho out in the farm. You get sick, take you out to the barn.